Welcome back to the Radio Podcasters. If you're enjoying these deep dives, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got lots more coming up. Today, we're going to be looking at something that's, I think, going to make everyone grip their armrests a little bit tighter.
Oh, yeah.
It's a story about a near collision in Austin, Texas,
Okay.
that could have ended very differently. So, imagine this. You've got dense fog rolling across the airport, a FedEx cargo plane making its final descent,
Oh, wow.
and a Southwest Airlines jet packed with passengers getting ready to take off.
Oh, no.
This is a story about just how close those two planes came to disaster and what it tells us about our increasing reliance on automation in aviation.
Yeah, what's really striking about this incident, which happened on February 4th, 2023, is that it happened during a time when these close calls were becoming, more and more common across U.S. airports.
Right.
And in this case, the FedEx plane came within 150 feet of the Southwest plane.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, that's shorter than the wingspan of a Boeing 747.
Okay, so we are talking really close here. But what I find fascinating is that we have a first-hand account from the FedEx cockpit.
Oh, really?
First Officer Robert Bradeen
Okay.
described seeing the silhouette of the Southwest plane in the fog, and he said it was a shocking moment.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, even with all the technology pilots have at their disposal, was this a situation where human intuition really saved the day?
That is such a good question. It's easy to think that with all the advances in automation that human error is becoming less of a factor, but in this case, even though the FedEx pilots, Captain Hugo Carvajal and First Officer Bradeen, were highly experienced and prepared for a Category 3 approach, which is essentially landing with instruments in zero visibility,
Right.
things still went wrong.
Yeah.
It was a combination of an air traffic control error and the lack of a ground radar system at the airport, and that created kind of a perfect storm for a potential disaster.
So even with all the sophisticated technology, it sounds like human oversight was absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. Now, standard procedure during a Category 3 approach wouldn't involve looking out the cockpit window, but thankfully, First Officer Bradeen went with his gut feeling.
Right.
He spotted the Southwest plane emerging from the fog-alerted Captain Carvajal, and Captain Carvajal immediately initiated what I called a go-around maneuver,
Okay.
basically pulling the FedEx plane up and away from danger.
Got it. So like slamming on the brakes and swerving at the last second
Exactly.
to avoid a head-on collision.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned that the pilots were prepared for a Category 3 approach, but what exactly does that mean for those of us who aren't pilots?
So a Category 3 approach is essentially as close as you can get to landing blind.
Okay.
It allows pilots to land in extremely low visibility conditions. So think dense fog, heavy snow,
Right.
using only instruments to guide them.
Okay.
These approaches require special pilot training and certification, as well as specific equipment on the aircraft and on the ground.
So these pilots were highly trained, they were prepared for the worst, and still almost collided with another plane.
Yeah.
It really underlines how many things have to go right for a safe landing, especially in challenging conditions.
Yeah.
What went wrong in the communication with air traffic control?
Well, the air traffic controller mistakenly cleared the Southwest plane for takeoff, while the FedEx plane was still on its final approach.
Oh, wow.
Now, the FedEx pilots did question the clearance.
Okay.
They confirmed that they were still authorized to land, but the mix-up created a dangerous situation where both planes were heading towards the same point on the runway.
Right.
This is where the lack of a ground radar system at the airport becomes really important.
I see.
If they had that technology, the controllers would have had a real-time picture of what was happening on the runway, even in the fog,
Right.
and they could have potentially prevented the near collision.
So the pilots did their due diligence
Yeah.
by questioning that clearance,
Yeah.
but we're still put in a very perilous situation.
Yeah.
It makes you think, was this a case of relying too much on technology and not enough on basic situational awareness?
That's an interesting point. It seems like there's a delicate balance between leveraging technology and maintaining that human element in aviation safety. And this is something that came up again and again in the NTSB investigation following the Austin incident. So the investigation actually resulted in 7 safety recommendations. And one of the key takeaways was the need for surface detection systems at all commercial airports by the end of 2025.
Okay.
These systems act like an extra set of eyes for air traffic controllers, especially in low visibility conditions.
Right.
They provide real-time information on the movement of aircraft and vehicles on the ground,
Got it.
which helps to prevent these kinds of runway incursions.
So it sounds like they're trying to learn from this close call and put measures in place to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah.
But is that enough?
Yeah.
Are these recommendations going to be implemented quickly enough to actually make a difference? I mean, we hear about these near misses happening more and more often these days.
Yeah, you're right to be concerned. The NTSB has actually been investigating over a dozen similar incidents since the beginning of last year, and it's clear that we need to address the underlying factors that are contributing to this increase.
Yeah, and what are some of those factors? Is it just human error, or is there something more systemic at play?
Well, human error will always be a possibility. I
Yeah.
mean, air traffic controllers are under immense pressure,
Sure.
and even small mistakes can have significant consequences.
Right.
But there are also systemic issues that need to be addressed.
Okay.
The lack of adequate ground radar systems at many airports, as we've discussed, is a major concern. And then there's the issue of, outdated technology in some areas of air traffic control.
Right.
The FAA has been working to modernize its systems, but progress has been slow, partly due to funding constraints and just the complexity of the undertaking.
Yeah, it's like trying to renovate a house while you're still living in it.
Exactly.
A massive and complicated project. It's understandable that it takes time, but it's still a bit unnerving to think about these vulnerabilities in such a critical system,
Yeah.
especially with the number of flights increasing every year.
And that's another crucial factor, the rapid growth of air travel.
Right.
More flights mean more congestion in the airspace and on the ground,
Sure.
which inherently increases the risk of incidents like the one in Austin.
So you have this complex interplay of human factors, technological limitations,
Right.
and increasing traffic volume. It's almost like a perfect storm for potential disaster.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, what can we as passengers do to feel a little safer when we fly?
That's a great question, and it's one I hear a lot.
Yeah.
While we can't directly control those larger systemic issues, we can stay informed about aviation safety and support efforts to improve it. There are organizations dedicated to advocating for safer skies, and they rely on public support to push for necessary changes.
Right.
And of course, we can always be mindful of our surroundings during our flights, paying attention to the safety briefings.
Right.
And just being observant during taxi takeoff and landing.
It's easy to get caught up in reading a book or watching a movie.
Exactly.
But you're right, those briefings are there for a reason. It all
Yeah.
comes down to being aware and engaged.
Exactly.
Right.
And remember, those pilots up front are highly trained professionals who are dedicated to our safety.
Right.
They undergo rigorous training, regular checkups, ongoing evaluations to make sure that they can handle any situation.
Right.
They're the experts, and we put our trust in them every time we step on a plane.
Yeah, their training and expertise were definitely on display in that Austin incident.
Absolutely.
Captain Carvajal and First Officer Bradeen received the Superior Airmanship Award for their actions, and rightfully so. They represent the kind of cool heads and quick thinking that can literally mean the difference between life and death in those critical moments.
Absolutely. And while we celebrate their heroism,
Yeah.
their story also raises a crucial question. If these types of incidents continue to occur, and all signs point to that being the case, how can we ensure that luck and heroism aren't the only things standing between us and a major aviation disaster? How can we make flying safer for everyone?
Yeah, it's a sobering thought and a question that I think deserves a lot of attention.
Yeah.
It feels like we're at a crossroads. We have this incredible technology that allows us to travel the world,
Yeah.
but at the same time, we're seeing the limits of that technology
Yeah.
and the importance of the human element. So where do we go from here? What needs to happen to make air travel safer?
Well, it's a multifaceted challenge, and it's going to require a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
I think we need continuous improvement in aviation safety protocols.
Right.
And that starts with a commitment to implementing those NTSB recommendations without delay.
Right.
That means pushing for the resources to modernize air traffic control systems across the board, not just at major hubs. And it means investing in ongoing training and development for both pilots and air traffic controllers to make sure that they're equipped to handle the increasing complexities of our airspace.
So it sounds like we all have a role to play here. Policymakers, aviation authorities, industry professionals, even passengers.
Yeah.
We can't just assume that someone else is taking care of safety. We need to be informed and engaged in the conversation.
Absolutely. And that's why these deep dives are so important.
Yeah.
It's not just about dissecting what happened in Austin. It's
Yeah.
about using that knowledge to drive positive change and hopefully prevent future incidents. The more we understand the risks, the vulnerabilities, the lessons learned, the more we can empower ourselves to advocate for a safer and more resilient aviation system.
It's a responsibility we all share and a conversation we need to keep having. And I think for our listeners today, maybe the takeaway is this. The next time you're on a flight, take a moment to think about the incredible complexity of the system that gets you safely from point A to point B. Appreciate the skill and dedication of the pilots and air traffic controllers, and consider what you can do to contribute to a culture of safety in aviation. Because ultimately, it's all about working together to make sure those near misses stay just that near misses.
Well said. We can't just rely on luck and heroism to keep our skies safe. It's about continuous learning adaptation and a commitment to making air travel as safe as it can possibly be.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into aviation safety. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. And as always, we encourage you to continue exploring these important topics. Until next time, safe travels, everyone.